Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. We are back with another Neurodiversity Story. So thank you again for joining us last week, which was the relaunch of our series now of stories. So we ran this a couple of years ago now, and through high demand, we were very pleased and humbled that everyone wanted it back. So we create this purely for you guys. So please do get in touch. Let us know where you're tuning in from. That would be incredible. The whole point of this, as I mentioned before, is to share your stories and your views around neurodiversity and being neurodiverse, and also just connecting with the community. So please do introduce yourself and let us know where you're coming from. We have another absolutely incredible guest. We have Katrina Lowry, who is the founder of Neuro Teachers, and she's going to be sharing her own personal story, and she's going to be touching on the fact of masking, which is something when I've had hundreds and hundreds of conversations with people over the years around this, and it's something that's very, very personal to me in the sense that we and Katrina will be able to explain this far better than I do, but around kind of how we mask, not just in our personal life, but in our work life as well. So she's also going to be sharing that and the incredible work that she's doing within the community as well. So like I said before, if you want to just join the chat, introduce, if there's any questions throughout this talk, then please do let us know. And we will endeavor to answer these questions. And also, if you're watching this on the replay, just let us know if you can just put replay. And if there's any questions on there, then I'm sure we can get around to answering those as well. So I would also like to say a massive thank you. We couldn't run these Neurodiversity Stories without the incredible help from our sponsors, and we have the International Dyslexia Learning Solutions Limited, the IDL, a global organization who do some phenomenal work. They specialize in multi-sensory software to primary and secondary schools globally. They have an absolutely amazing range of products and services. Please do check them out. I want you to just have a little look at one of their videos of the stuff they do. And as you're watching this, please do, if you want to get in touch with them, please do check out their website and let us know. Thank you.
IDL Wellbeing has been made to meet the needs of primary school age pupils in developing mental toughness and emotional intelligence. As well as learning about themselves using our brand new thought detective, pupils will also practice positive affirmations and gratitude, both of which have been shown to improve mental health. In addition, pupils can make positive decisions around their feelings with our Worry Washer, and set positive behavioural goals based on 6 emotional competencies that we have identified as confident, curious, connected, reflective, active, and organised. To support their growth and model mindful habits, we've developed many activities including breathing exercises, a body scan, desk exercises to be done individually or as a class, guided meditation, our maze game, make a face, as well as Sudoku, word searches, and a dot-to-dot mindful practice.
So a massive thank you to our sponsors for Neurodiversity Stories, IDL. All their details will be they're displayed on the screen now, but also in the chat below. So guys, one of the slight technical hit. One of the incredible thing that we have today is we have Katrina, who's going to be sharing her amazing story. So I want to give Katrina the opportunity to introduce herself. But I also just want to share for all of our guests, I do ask kindly if they would just be able to give us a little bit of a blurb, just so we can let you know a little bit more about them. So it's a real brief introduction, and I hope I do you justice, Katrina, on this one. So Katrina founded Neurodiversity Neuro Teachers to help educate settings work with their autistic and neurodivergent learners to find simple solutions for inclusive practice. Katrina is neurodivergent herself, having the dual diagnosis of dyslexia and bipolar disorder. She is qualified special needs teacher and an experienced Senko and advisory teacher. Katrina, I'm going to bring you on to follow up with the rest on this side of it, and let people know all about you and also share your story. So please do stick around. Let us know again where you're tuning in from, and please let us welcome Katrina. Katrina, good morning.
Good morning, Darren.
How are you today?
I'm really well, actually. Yeah, it's very warm for the time of year.
I know. It is. We're filming this. If anyone's watching this across the seas, we are filming this in the UK at the moment, and we are, I guess, incredibly blessed that we have. Would this now officially be our summer, even though summer is officially kind of, I guess, over?
I suppose they call it the Indian summer, don't they?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, they do. So, Katrina, I hope my introduction, like I said, there's so many incredible things that you've done and that you're doing. But if I could just ask you, if you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about yourself, and then we can dive in and hear about your story.
Thank you. Yes. So I'm a teacher by trade. I was a classroom teacher or working in schools for 23 years, and then in lockdown, in fact, in 2021, I started to do some online work, and then Neuro Teachers kind of grew out of that, which is my company. So now I work independently as a teaching director of Neuro Teachers, and we find simple solutions for inclusive practice. So we work with nurseries and schools, primary and secondary, colleges and businesses to try and help inclusion for neurodivergent people. I'm neurodivergent myself. As I say, I've got the diagnosis of dyslexia and bipolar condition. I'm going to do a little bit of a caveat there. I would strongly state that bipolar is a neurodivergent condition because my brain's different as a result. So therefore, it's a neurodivergent condition. People debate that, but I'm pretty confident that it is. But also as well, I'm on the diagnostic pathway for ADHD, dyspraxia, and sensory processing disorders. So I think there's quite a lot going on in my personal neurodivergent fruit salad. But yeah, I mean, my kind of mission in life is to improve things for other neurodivergent people such as myself. I work a lot with schools to try and improve conditions for neurodivergent teachers and other members of staff as well. That's something that I'm quite proud of. Yeah. And yeah, it's been quite an interesting journey. Obviously, the last time we chatted was a couple of years ago, and I was right at the very beginning with Neuro Teachers. But it's been very interesting following the demand and just seeing the explosion in understanding of neurodivergence.
Katrina, thank you so much for that introduction, and I followed personally your journey over the past few years, and like I said, we've connected for quite some time, and it's been amazing how much has evolved, yourself in what you've done, and the incredible work that you're doing, and you touched on the fact of helping teachers kind of understand more. What's that kind of process been like? Because would you say what in the sense of the acceptance of the awareness, a few years ago to what it is now?
I would say, like, I optimistically stated at the beginning of 2023 that this was going to be the year of neurodiversity, and I haven't been disappointed at all. I think there's a lot more understanding of what the terminology is, what neurodivergent means, that actually the different kinds of minds and brains that we have in society evolved for a good reason. Yeah. Like now on LinkedIn, for example, you've got dyslexia as being a talent. It's one of the things that you can put dyslexic thinking into your list of talents on your LinkedIn profile. That's amazing. I never would have thought, as a 9-year-old getting diagnosed with dyslexia and being shoved in a porta cabin down the end of the school playground, I never in a million years would have thought that I actually could see it as a marketable skill.
And you're absolutely right. And on a platform which is predominant, I mean, LinkedIn's changed over the years anyway, but on a if you were to pick a platform to think, actually, this is where we're going to be placing it, you got to think, really? Like to start the movement, obviously, which Made by Dyslexia has obviously worked on, having
really
this done. But for a platform which I guess, we're still kind of in and am in. I don't know if that's correct terminology, but whether when we have a CV, do we put that we're dyslexic or neurodivergent or these things, and whether we do or not, we still have this thought: should I? Is it going to affect the recruitment process? Is it going to, am I going to get the interview for it? When I get the interview, what does the questions entail? Are they going to be focusing more on a disability or what attributes I can bring to the company. So it does change the forefront in it starts that process in a more professional social media platform, I guess.
It's been really interesting, actually, because obviously, like, it's front and center of my whole career. Like, people employ me as a speaker or, to work strategically with their organization, their school or their business because I'm neurodivergent. So, like, I've made it like front and center of my entire business. Like, I literally have turned it to gold. And I never thought that I would do that. So, I mean, like, what I wanted to talk about today, because we were talking about masking.
Please do, yeah.
I masked for years, really effectively, years and years. I mean, I started my teaching career back in the late 90s. For about 17 years, I masked completely. I didn't tell anyone even that I was dyslexic, let alone bipolar. My goodness, no way am I going to tell people I work with children and I've got a mental health problem. And then it just became too much. And then, like, I had this huge breakdown and I couldn't work at all. And I had to be signed off for quite a few months. I think it was about 3 months. And then I just didn't have any choice. Didn't have any choice but to tell people what was going on for me. And you know what? It was like the most liberating. People use that word a lot, don't they? Right? I don't mean to be like...
No, but in the right context, absolutely. I would definitely use it.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's all this Instagram stuff, isn't it? About liberation of being your authentic self. But honestly, like, I never in a million years would have thought that it would lead me to the place where I am now. I mean, it was bad. And, like, eventually I had to leave that job. Yeah. But it led me to start Neuro Teachers and the opportunities that I've had since doing it. And also as well, do you know what? The people who I've been able to help as a result, so I stood up in front of a school on Tuesday. There was like a conglomeration of like a couple of different little schools in Merthyr, and I stood up and did an inset day. And I go, "Hello, my name's Katrina Lowry. I'm dyslexic and bipolar." And there's a room full of like 40 people that I've never met before in my entire life. And I'm standing there talking in front of them. And the first thing I tell them about them is that I've got a special, different kind of brain. Like, there's no way I would have ever in a million years thought that I would doing that, let alone I was literally being paid to do that. And that bowls me over. Like, I don't think that could have happened 5 years ago because there wasn't the knowledge. But now there's like this thirst for knowledge, and it's a really great time to be neurodivergent.
That word, the thirst for knowledge, and that's what I remember talking. We spoke, a couple of years ago, and we mentioned that. I always say, my educational side of it, I felt I was quite deprived of learning, purely because, similar to yourself, put in a portal cabin, I was just giving colouring in books, more like just an activity to keep me out of the way. And now, like yourself, this real thirst for knowledge of wanting to learn something every day, wanting to share again what you've learned, and that's so powerful. And I guess it's you whenever I speak to yourself, Katrina, you light up when you talk about these things, because not only are you helping yourself in what you're doing, but the amount of people that you're helping. And I don't think we'll ever really know to the extent of how many people you've helped, because it's like a pebble, isn't it? It just continues to go. Well, if I could just touch on the fact of when you spoke about, first of all, you said that you were in a place where you broke down, and it was a real kind of a tough moment, and then you thought, actually, I can't live like this anymore. When you started speaking to people, was this in a work environment that you started to first having these conversations?
Yeah, I mean, so in the previous time we talked, the whole thing with so I got diagnosed as dyslexic when I was 9, and then I got diagnosed as bipolar when I was 32. And then after I was diagnosed with bipolar, I told no one, right? There were like a handful of people who knew because they had to, but I didn't say anything at work. I didn't tell any of my close friends because I was ashamed. Like, I was really, really ashamed of it. And then when it comes to the point where I had a huge breakdown, and it was because of mental health, and I couldn't hide it anymore because, it was just obvious that was what had happened. Because a lot of my panic attacks and things were very public, unfortunately. So people literally could see it, there was no way of masking it any longer. I did lose friends, and I did and in the end I did have to leave that job. But overridingly, I would say most people were quite positive and wanted to know what they could do to help.
Yeah.
So, you know, I generally say to people, you know, it's like any kind of thing where you out yourself. It's your journey, it's your decision. You kind of decide when you want to divulge that kind of aspect of your identity to people. But most people are pretty positive. You're going to get people who say stupid stuff, aren't you? But most people are genuinely quite positive, and it does really work in your favor, you know?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, and you know your personal journey, and I feel these are really powerful for people who are going through, and you get, it's like you mentioned, it's a journey, and people are going through different stages of their journey of disclosing it to family members, to friends, to workplaces, and understanding is well how you do these things, and I guess, you know, I quite openly talk about being dyslexic and with ADHD. You know, it's pretty much like yourself. It's what we do on a daily basis. But I guess I would still, and I'll put this out, I'd still second guess if I was applying now for another position. I'd still second guess whether to put it. I mean, it'd be very difficult to not put it on there. I'm not saying I wouldn't, but I would still second guess whether I was going to put something like that on there. I would, but it's still emotional to me. It still thinks, and then you go through that emotion, and then you go, yes, I will. And then if you don't get something, it then comes, I can imagine it come back and going, was it that? So I'm just, I don't think we've got to that stage yet. But there's definitely a huge, you know, especially sort of 8 years ago when I started talking about this, there's so much more knowledge around this. Would you say?
Yeah, definitely. And it is hard because, you know, like, I'm not an employee. Like, people hire me to do pieces of work, or I work on projects. So I'm not an employee. And it's much easier for me because people are hiring me as the entity of Neuro Teachers, you know, as the company director, or my role within that, or as a speaker. And so I have terms and conditions that are, you know, like, because I'm neurodivergent, I need these pieces of information. I will need this. I'm going to need a quiet place to go. I'm going to need somewhere quiet to have my lunch. I need really clear directions about where to park my car, and, you know,
but it's
where the toilets are and stuff.
Absolutely, and it's all this pre-planning and all of these different things that we you know, I guess people don't really think about. I guess you know, I always talk about you know, carrying my headphones around with me all the time, because I get kind of a bit of a sensory overload. So if you go to if I'm speaking at an event on that day, I will go in and I'll go down to breakfast, and I'll just have my headphones in, and I'll just be listening to classical music or something, because I don't want to give all my energy away and you know, completely exhaust myself. But I can see how that sometimes can be, especially if you're in a group of people, can be seen as, oh, well, that person's rude, or they're not talking to us, or, you know, these situations. But it's almost there, and I would do that. I would then do the talk, and then I'd have to put the headphones back in and kind of calm myself after, and then I can go again. Have you been in situations like this where you have strategies in place?
Yeah, I mean, like, one of the things I say, so there's, you know, there's some organizations that I work with regularly. I'll give them like a whole list of things. One of the things I say is, please be blunt, almost to the point of rudeness, about what it is exactly that you want me to do. Like, I want bullet points of, like, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, and then I'm fine. Give me the exact perimeters of what you want to do. Otherwise, expect about 508 neurodivergent questions about that, because if there's too many variations, my executive functioning can't cope with that. You know, it's like that thing, Katrina, describe a beach. All I can think of is every single beach I've ever been to in my entire life, every beach I've ever seen on television, every single beach I've ever seen on the internet, every single beach I've ever experienced in any kind of way, shape, or form, right? Which beach? This beach, Katrina, this beach. And then I'm fine, you know? But it's just like I always say, I really need you to be like that. I'm not very good at small talk. I did some at the beginning of this episode, but I'm not very good at small talk. Yeah. Especially if I've got like a burning question, I will just say it so I can come across a bit blunt. And you know, it's just about like the mechanics of things. I can't manage my own diary. I have a PA who does that. Can't do it otherwise, because I once set my Calendly to New York time.
Oh my goodness.
Do not send me a Calendly link. I cannot use Calendly because I will like end up in Abu Dhabi time or something.
You'll be thinking, how do I have a meeting at 3:30 in the morning?
Yeah, I did that. I literally did that, and I had no idea. And then Paula, my amazing virtual assistant, had to change it all like that. The amount of like the kind of logistics, the admin, that kind of thing, right? I have to delegate. I'm fortunate enough to be able to put that into my own costs. You know, my business is doing okay. I can afford to apply the PA, and I have her to do that. Do you know what else as well? Right. This is just a little aside. I would definitely recommend to everybody that you apply for Access to Work, because it is a really, really good fund.
Yeah.
However, I had to get my PA to help me fill in those forms, because they are so complicated and convoluted. I have a master's degree, right? And I worked at a senior level, and I couldn't fathom them. So how somebody who's like, you know, average education sort of thing would be able to fill in those forms, I do not know. But I definitely would recommend to everybody that you do, you know, if you're listening and you believe you may be neurodivergent and you need help with reasonable adjustments at work, definitely apply for that, because they are amazing once you get through to them. The other thing is as well, they only do everything by phone. So if you're a person who can't use the phone, that's not very accessible, is it?
Yeah.
Those are people who are neurodivergent really struggle with phones.
I think, and I completely agree. The process, we know a great company that helps support this. So we may do an episode on this to dive more into the Access to Work. I know Andrew Wilmot, thank you for joining us. He knows absolutely nothing about Access to Work. What do you use it for? It is there's so much, and we will I'll put some links on this, Andrew, so you can have a little look at this. But you're absolutely right, Katrina. There is it is you know, an incredibly helpful for the individuals to help with tech support, and obviously you know, support with everyday tasks as well. So we'll put some links onto that one.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's the tech support. You can get help with a PA. There's all sorts of things. Look, it's up to £60,000 worth of adjustments you can get, and pretty much whatever you need, they will find a way to support you with it. But yeah, definitely refer to what Darren said. What Darren said.
What Darren said. Kelly, thank you. You've put, I think, the link between energy, outer charisma, and introversion with neurodiversity is an interesting one. As I mentioned before, the energy that I feel we give out, and sometimes it does feel incredibly overwhelming. So we've touched on that, and that's something you have to find, I guess, your own kind of coping strategies around this. And I love the fact that thank you for sharing that, Kelly. And I love the fact, Katrina, you said that you almost not preempt these things, but you almost put these barriers in, these plans in place. So make sure the questions, make sure this is clear, make sure that's clear. And I think those quick question, these coping mechanisms, we use the word coping mechanisms, but I guess it's more like forward thinking and strategies of how you work. How have they come about for you? Because if someone's listening now and they say, "Oh, I hear the word coping strategies and coping mechanisms. How do I find what works for me?" And what? How have you developed your strategies around this?
It's quite interesting because my partner and my partner's also neurodivergent. We call them tent pegs. So, you know, like when you have to build, like you get up every morning and it's like you've got to build this big invisible tent before you can actually do anything, because you need the tent, because otherwise you can't do anything. Like you can't work, you can't function in your home. You have to build this big tent. And the problem about it is that you need a lot of tent pegs for that. And also because no one else can see it, they're always tripping over your guy ropes and always like pulling your tent pegs up by mistake and going, oh, what are you worried about? It's only a tent. Well, I can't even see it anyway. Sort of thing. So that's the mask, isn't it? I mean, it's the mask basically. So we call them tent pegs, but it's just like, I think I developed them over time because I think fear was my biggest motivator to do things, because I couldn't be found out, you see, because when I got diagnosed as dyslexic back in the 80s as a 9-year-old, it was very much about like, you have to hide this. You've got to pretend that you need to be neurotypical.
Yes.
So at first, all of my coping strategies were purely to try and make me behave as neurotypically as possible. And then after the big breakdown, what happened was I actually started to think about what I needed, because I was kind of like laying bare, if you see what I mean, insofar as like there was no tent.
Yeah.
So I had to think about what
so very, very vulnerable at that stage.
Yeah, you're quite vulnerable, but then you've got the only choice that you've got is to grow a new skin.
Love it.
Right. So it's like, you know, my partner and I, we both have mental health things, and we're always talking about staring into the abyss. Once you've stared into the abyss, you know what it's like. And so your only way is up from there. If you see what I mean, that's like rock bottom. And then from that point, you can rebuild yourself. And I'm not saying I recommend having a huge breakdown. I'm not saying I recommend that. But actually, all the fear is gone because the worst has happened. You know?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and thank you for sharing that. Again, you know, your personal story on this. Masking is such a big thing, and it's been more prevalent now. More people are talking about you know, their own masking of you know, and I guess we all as human beings, we mask in a certain way. We act in a certain way when we go to work. We act in a certain way when we come home, and you know, you put that professional kind of persona on this. But I guess, you know, when we think of this from a mental health point of view, on the long-term effects, you know, we can mask one day or 2 days, a week, a month. But then when it goes on and on and on for, you know, for years, the effects that they can have on you are tremendous. And I guess it you know, for yourself, I guess it just come to an abrupt, not abrupt, but, you know, to a point where you couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, well, it's like this. It's, you know, and this is what I say whenever I deliver training about this. It's the mask leads to fatigue. The fatigue leads to burnout, and then the burnout leads to the trauma, because after the burnout, you've dropped the mask and it's shattered into 1,000 pieces. And you don't have your protection that you had for all of these you know, weeks, months, years. And then you feel traumatized because you lost that, but also as well because you are like laid bare, you know. And so like it can take a long time. It's that kind of, you know, autistic neurodivergent burnout is, I would say, the mental health equivalent to having a really serious car crash or something like that. Insofar as it does take you a good year or so to get over, and then even then the repercussions can go on for a long time. You know, look, physically, I broke my leg in 2018. No one minds if I walk with a slight limp, right? People kind of expect it because I got metalwork in there, right? Whereas mental health, you have a huge, massive breakdown, and everyone expects you to be fine 6 to 8 weeks later. Whereas actually, do you know what? If you've had a massive massive breakdown, it probably would take you a couple of years to get better. I mean, that would make sense, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. You know, it's still, like you said, that, you know, breaking the leg, it's still a healing process. And it's also, I guess, if we looked at this, say it was kind of years and years of building up to, you know, to this moment where things just got too much and it broke down. Not only do you have to deal with, you know, that side of it, of, you know, the breakdown and what that looks like, I guess you have to then relearn or you know, learn the ways of not living like that before. And that it's almost like learning a new skill, I guess, or I don't know if that's the correct analogy, but but the way of life that you have of masking and feeling that way, you have to almost reinvent yourself and go, well, I can't do that anymore. And I think that's probably one of the most difficult things as well, because that's our life.
That's the thing, isn't it? It's like you said, right? Probably one of the most common questions I get asked is, how do I unmask? And I'm not saying I'm proficient at it, because I do have to mask to a certain extent. Like the beginning of a conversation, you've got to start with blah, blah, how'd you get here? How's the weather? Because that's what's expected of everybody. And I still find that quite difficult, especially if I have a burning question. But I learned how to do it when I was quite young, because people told me not to just blurt stuff out. So, I've learned how to do that. And there's certain things that you still have to do, because you can't just punch someone at a bus stop because you don't like their opinion about Brexit or whatever. You can't just do whatever you want. You still have to do some things because we live in society. But at the same time, you can be authentic. And that's the thing, is about learning to be authentic. So things like honoring your stims, for example. Like, I have this little Allen key that I've been twizzling the entire time that we're in conversation. I do it like, basically I just do that between my fingers all the time, because it helps me to concentrate and focus on what I'm doing. And also I'm in a swirly chair, so I can do a little bit of
Same.
I spent so much time trying to suppress all of that and not do it, and also telling the children that I taught that they mustn't do it because it was distracting. It wasn't distracting for me, it was distracting for whoever else. Like, the teacher would find it annoying when I was in school, so I just assumed that was something you weren't supposed to do. But actually, do you know what? The fact that I can sit and play with an Allen key during my conversation with you, Darren, makes it much easier for me to just be honest and open. It's just this tiny little thing,
I love that. I remember, pretty much a lot of the guests that I spoke to on the last seasons of this, they'd always mention that they have something that they're doing, whether it's something that they can see and kind of touch every now and again, or something they can twiddle around. I mentioned this on the last episode as well. Certain noises. So, and we mentioned briefly about sensory and being overloaded on these things. I remember attending my management meeting when I was in sort of regional management kind of side, and we go into a meeting and it was just in a room for hours and hours. And I remember there was one manager, and he would just literally have a pen, and I won't do it now, but he would click the top of the pen and because these meetings went on for hours, he would just click it continuously. And for him, that's kind of soothing because it's doing something. But I just remember, like, I could feel it, I was almost imagining being the spring being suppressed down and then boinging back up. So I remember after about 20 minutes, I was almost doing this because I felt like I know it sounds crazy, but I was not crazy, but I was felt like I was the spring. That really kind of got to me. So I guess it's just trying to find something like that in a classroom environment that works definitely for the individual to be able to kind of thing. And then I guess around, the other people around. And I guess that's the balance, isn't it? It's understanding why someone needs an Allen key, or someone needs a clicking pen, or someone needs these things, because it's a massive support mechanism.
Yeah. But I mean, it's that whole OT. If you ever have a conversation with an occupational therapist, what they will always say to you is, if you want to know what somebody's getting out of their stim, then do the stim yourself, and you'll find what they're getting from it. So for me, there's a little bit of proprioception there, because this is quite sharp at each end, but not so it's digging in, and I'm twisting it as well, so I'm getting a little bit of the vestibular, bit of my balance center is being slightly, and also with this a little bit of the balance center. Now that's fine, because I'm not actually, there's no one else in the room apart from my dog, and she's fine with it. She's completely chilled.
She told you that it's fine.
Yeah, she said it's fine. She said I'm allowed to do that. So she is in charge around here. So we call her Neuro Dog. So yeah, it's her real name, Roxy. But if you have somebody in a classroom or a work environment who has a stim that isn't desirable, then what you do is you try the stim, and then you see whether you can find something that you can give them the same feedback from that is less. Did that man need his click, or did he need the feeling that it was going down and up? Because that's appropriate.
That's really interesting. That's a really interesting point of view, actually. And I guess this, for someone else, it's just they're just clicking the pen. You stop doing that.
If you're neurotypical, you'd probably just be able to kind of, whatever they do, what do they do? I don't know. I mean, they do something where they don't hear that.
Yeah.
Well, like clocks ticking, I cannot abide clocks ticking.
I've been in hotels before, and I'm desperately trying to. There was one clock years ago, and I'd always take them off the wall and take the take the batteries off.
Always.
And I remember there was one, and it was literally must have been wired up to the mains or something, so you couldn't do something. And I was thinking, I was led in bed imagining going, well, if I put a sheet over it or a pillow, or even tried to stop it or something, and yeah, it was just I would just continuously absorb myself around this.
Yeah.
The clicking of the
yes, some wicked hyper focus goes into trying to make clocks stop ticking. I used to work in an open plan office, right? There's one clock on this wall, one clock on this wall, and the 2 ticks were off. And I was in the middle. My seating was in the middle. I asked reasonable adjustments, and I said, I cannot be sitting in the middle of an open plan office. It's too distracting for me, and I can't have those 2 clocks ticking. I went late one day, went in late, stayed till late, took them down and tried to set them to the same time so they were at the same time. I spent an hour and a half doing that once because it was so because nobody would let me take the damn clocks down.
But again, in serious terms, that's the coping mechanism that you're trying to put in place, because you're then foreseeing, okay, I have to sit in this environment tomorrow, the next day, and so on and so on, and I need a solution for this. And the only way I can find a solution is because if you turned around and said to someone, the clocks are out, they're ticking wrong, they'd be going, wow, you've got a great sense for detail, haven't you?
Yeah, well done.
You've noticed this, but you're like, no, seriously, they're out. This really affects.
And I'm between the two as well. The other thing is as well, because I think, like I said, undiagnosed auditory processing disorder. Again, this is a thing that people don't understand. It's not that I can't hear anything. It's just that I can hear everything. So I can hear all of the conversations that are going on at once, and I can't filter them out. That's the word, isn't it? Filter. That's what they do, isn't it?
Filter. Yep.
Filter. They filter it out.
It goes,
I can't filter it out. I can hear all the conversations at the same time. So I can hear this conversation over here in so much detail as this one over here, including the one that I'm having at the same time. So I cannot concentrate because it's just so much information. I can't do it.
I used to think as a child, I almost had like spidey sense, where you could hear, you see in these Hollywood movies, and you've got, there's sort of, they zoom over, they can hear a bit of a conversation and then a conversation and stuff. And I can do this, and I think, as a child, I was thinking, that must be a superpower or something. I've just got something, going on. And as you grow up as an adult, you start thinking, actually, I just need to concentrate on this one here. And you're like, well, actually, but I know, and I know, and almost you can follow it, can't you? Everything that's going on. So, Katrina, tell me about Neuro Teachers. How did that come about, and the kind of the work that you do with it now? I know you touched on the fact that you do this in the educational side of it. So tell me a little bit more about Neuro Teachers.
Well, I left the aforementioned job where I had the breakdown, and I was fortunate enough to get redundancy. So I had a little bit of money to start this. I went to, sounds so luxurious. I went to Spa Day because it was my partner's birthday. And after I'd had the treatments, there's like a relaxation room where they just gave you a pen and a pencil and, a pen and a piece of paper. And I started drawing this little logo, which was my logo for Neuro Teachers.
Wonderful.
And it's a brain with a thumbprint inside it. And if you know anything about me, I'm really, really not creative insofar as I've got brilliant ideas, but I cannot get stuff on the page. So it was very poor drawing. And then I started to think about how it would be. My original idea, which I'm like now coming to fruition, is that it would be an online learning platform where, you could have videos and, little podcasts and what have you that would give you really short pieces of information if you are, struggling to support a neurodivergent child in the classroom. That was my original idea. And then I had got a job that was part-time, working as a special needs coordinator in a small school. And so I just set it up as a kind of part-time thing. And initially, I was mainly just doing what I'd done as an advisory teacher, which was supporting children who were close to exclusion.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of snowballed from there. I never expected to be we're doing more of this kind of stuff where I'm working with neurodivergent employees. I never expected that to happen, but it's really developed kind of out of working with people, spot me on LinkedIn and what have you, and thinking, oh yeah, this would be really useful for business, and wanting to think about their employees and how they can make their office more neurodivergent friendly, for example. And then that's kind of circled round to me helping like big multi-academy trusts and organizations think about how they can support neurodivergent teachers. And also just like me becoming a bit of an advocate and saying like neurodivergent teachers actually have a lot to offer the education system.
Absolutely, and that's what I absolutely love the journey, Katrina, and the fact that we spoke a few years ago, and seeing how you've kind of flourished into this, and the help is just truly wonderful, and
thank you,
and inspiring, massively inspiring. So please take that on board. It is incredibly inspiring, and I will mention again the pebble effect that you're helping in the conversations that not only the people that you've helped, but the people that they will now help, and it goes on and on and on, and then suddenly you then start to make these massive, significant changes from just one conversation. So, how, and I guess they always say out of kind of something that bad happens, or a travesty, or something that affects someone, we make a decision. And by you making that decision to actually, after that time to, right, I'm going to do this and this and this, and then you go off and do the spa day, and then you start doing your logo. Who would have thought when you were scribbling away your logo? And I'm sure you do have creativity in you to start thinking about these things. But who'd have thought from doing that one logo, when they handed you the pen and the paper, would then go into what you formulated?
No, I never would have thought. I really never would have thought it as well. Like, a lot of people talk about life after teaching, and that just seemed like this strange, mysterious world. I still consider myself to be a teacher. Like I said, I'm a teacher by trade. Like, it's in me. It's part of my identity. But the entrepreneurial side of things, I knew nothing about business at all. Darren, when I spoke to you the first time, I think I said I know nothing about business. But circling back to the dyslexic thinking, one of the things that, if you are neurodivergent, you see things slightly differently. So you can see problems and opportunities in a different way than neurotypical people. And you also have that helicopter view. You're quite strategic naturally, because you're so used to having to plan your whole existence because of your tent pegs, that this gives you quite a good broad strategic overview, and a unique way of seeing problems, going, okay, well, what if we turn it from this angle or this angle?
Absolutely.
And that definitely does help. And also as well, I think probably because the fact I had a massive breakdown, I'm not really afraid to stick my head above the parapet now, because what's the worst that could happen?
But it is inspiring, because we have, for as many of us that are open to tell these stories and share these, there are an abundance of people that don't feel comfortable. So being able to have that confidence and strength that you have, to be able to come forward and say, this is what happened, this is what I've done, this is what we're doing, these are the things that help me, and again, you'll be able to find your own strategies around this. But it is very inspiring, and I think we need definitely we need lots more people like yourself to continue this movement of education and well-being, and you touched on the fact when we talk about teachers who deal with special education, and I guess it was when you look into a school, I guess it was back in the day, it's probably just one teacher that would primarily just look after the troubled children. That's not me saying, that's just, I was called
that's
the troubled
what they
child.
used to say. That's what they used to say about us, isn't it?
And you actually, you mentioned, and so rightly so, that these teachers, they're worth their weight in gold, because not only do they have to teach, they have to deal with the behavior side of it, and obviously show the empathy side. I'm not saying teachers don't show empathy, and teachers are incredible. I'm just saying from if we're just purely talking about this, special education teacher, that they have to do so much around this. to deal with it, especially if a child is labeled like I was, a troubled child, when really it's you just don't fit into the class because you just don't learn in that way. So it is remarkable that the work you're doing is highlighting the incredible work they're doing and the potential that they have.
Thank you. I mean, I think that's really important. And latterly in my career, after I had the breakdown and I was just able to say, I started saying to kids, look, I'm struggling with that because of my dyslexia, or I'm really good at this because my bipolar gives me a different point of view. And I would talk about the fact that I was neurodivergent. I was really open about it. And they loved it, especially because, I was a special needs teacher, and the kids would come to me. I was a Senko actually at that school, and the kids would come to me and talk to me because I had the similar point of view to them, and I understood what it was like to be not neurotypical. So I think, neurodivergent teachers actually have a lot to offer from that role model point of view, but also, if you're autistic or ADHD and you have special interests, why not stand up in front of a class of children and inspire them for 6 hours a day?
Absolutely. And I would have loved, because when I started going to do sort of public speaking, I remember contacting my old school, which was bashed down and rebuilt as an academy. And that was the first sort of public speaking, apart from a couple of networking events, that was the first public speaking event that I went to. And it was just, I didn't even know schools did, this was probably 8-9 years ago or something. I didn't even know schools brought people in to talk about, their journey and things. And I've got to say, I was brought in to speak. I thought I was speaking to 5 children in the secondary school, and I remember walking into the school, and I felt, as I was walking back into the school, even though it was built as an academy, it still felt like the old school. I remember walking out, I felt like a child again, and I was very nervous. I was thinking all these emotions that we're going through, and I remember the teacher handing me a microphone, and I'm thinking, my goodness, how far away are these children going to be? How, and he said, no, you need this because we've decided to put you as an assembly instead of just, speaking to a couple of individuals. The sheer panic, I still feel a little bit kind of heart palpitations now. The sheer panic that went through me, thinking it's now hundreds of people in the school. And I remember doing the talk, and it went well. I think it did, because you almost sort of zone out. But it was those moments that I've now put in place, like you said, the tent pegs, to think, actually, if there is going to be a change, then I need to, or even a consideration, actually, we would love to bring you in just to talk to a few individuals, but or we could do a school assembly, which ones you prefer. And I think those barriers, but I'd still say I've spoken to 100,000 students over the years, and speaking in front of children is still one of the most hardest things to do, because they're so honest with their facial expressions, and it's the most rewarding, but sometimes they can be the most honest. But it just that really gave me a thought about the tent pegs of how to start putting these things in place, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is, it's interesting, isn't it, giving you a last minute change like that, because I would not cope very well with that. And I'm good at assemblies. I was ahead of year.
Well, see, I think if you've done assemblies before, I just got into the stage where obviously I felt all the children was kind of ushered in, and then they're saying, oh, some guys coming to talk about this, and it was if you go to a business expo, or you're talking and they actually book on because they're interested about the topic or the speaker. But I felt when in the school environment, they're like, I haven't got much choice. I need to go in and listen. So you have to really kind of make it engaging enough for them to want to listen. But it's still hands down one of the most rewarding things to be able to inspire the younger generation in any way, whatever topic it is. If you can find it relatable to them, then I would definitely encourage them to do it. But it's amazing what you're continuing to do.
Thank you. I mean, it is. It's really important. We have a lot as neurodivergent people who've been relatively successful in our fields. It is important that your neurodivergent kids hear about that, because you can, it's that hot. Anything about diversity and inclusion is like that, isn't it? You can't, if you can see it, then you're more likely to become it.
Absolutely. And I just want to share. Olive Hickmott, who's a fantastic advocate, but neurodivergent teachers have such a benefit of really getting to the kids. And Olive, thank you so much for sharing that. You're absolutely right. And exactly what Katrina was saying as well. Katrina, we are coming to the end. I told you it would fly by. Hopefully, hopefully you've enjoyed this just as much as I have. Katrina, if people want to get in touch with yourself, contact you for the work that you do, I will put all the details on the blurb around this. But how can people connect with you?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm on various different social media, and the best thing is my website, which is www.neuroteachers.com. I've just launched a shop on there at the moment, so I have lots of printables, downloadables, and ebooks that are available for supporting neurodivergent people. I am about to run a course called Embracing Neurodiversity in the Classroom, which is about adaptive teaching for neurodivergent pupils. That's also going to be available. This is going to be a live course, but there's also going to be a pre-record as well that's going to come out later in this autumn, which will be available again on the website. And I'm highly contactable by most social media. I'm also on Threads now and everything.
Wow.
Yes, I know. Very fancy. It's actually really good, I definitely recommend it.
Threads, just for anyone that's listening, is an Instagram. I can't use the word Instagram, Twitter thing, but it is
it's like a cross between Instagram and Twitter, I'd say. But without the mess that Twitter's turned into.
Yeah, we won't get. That's another show.
Let's not go into that, shall we? So I'm at Neuro Teachers on most social media, including Threads, Twitter or X or whatever it's called these days, Facebook. I'm on Instagram as at Neuro Teachers UK. There's lots and lots of content on there. There's also, I have a YouTube channel, and there's lots of content you can get. And I also have a blog on my website. And if you'd like to hire me for speaking as well, just contact me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I will put all of the relevant links underneath this so you can get hold of Katrina. There is an absolute wealth of knowledge there. So please do get in touch. Katrina, it's been absolutely wonderful to not only speak to you today, but catch up with you as my first ever second guest.
There we go.
Second guest of myself. Yeah, it's great to have you back. I don't know where I was going with this, but it's great to have you back. And thank you so much for your time. And I honestly say you're an incredibly inspirational person. Please keep doing what you do. The world needs to hear your message and continue sharing it and the knowledge that you bring. So thank you so much. It's a real blessing to call you my friend and the work that you do.
Thanks, Darren. It's been really lovely to come on here, and thank you so much for relaunching this. I think it's brilliant, and I look forward to listening to all the other speakers you've got lined up.
Bless you. Thank you so much, Katrina, and we'll see you very, very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So thank you so much for everyone that watched this live. If you are watching this on the replay, please chuck in replay. And if there are any questions that evoke from the conversation that we have, then please put these in there, and myself and Katrina will work our way through the questions. Thank you as always for our incredible guests. We are back again next Friday with another remarkable guest. If you do want to be a guest on the show, then please do contact me via either Neurodiversity Stories or via LinkedIn, and we'll be back next week with another guest. Have a fantastic rest of the Friday and a wonderful weekend, and we'll speak to you soon. Take care, peeps. Speak to you soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.